All right, let's check in with our guests and find out what Joe Giglio thinks of Ovies and Giglio. Give him a follow on X at Giglio_OG. Joe, really appreciate you joining us, man. As I was talking about, only the third time last year in 13 seasons Dave Doran's team has had a losing season. Do a lot of people in Raleigh expect the Wolfpack to bounce back this year and maybe win 7 or 8 games this season?
This is the most unusual off season that I can remember for NC State football. And first of all, thank you for having me on. Appreciate you
Yeah,
inviting me. I came on last year. I did tell you guys to put SMU in that ACC
you
title
did.
game.
You did.
So I like that. I like that. No, it's so weird this year because NC State made a big splash in basketball when they hired Will Wade. And the fan base has been galvanized by that because you got to remember, NC State is a school that has national championships in men's basketball in 1974 and 1983. And before the world had ever heard of Duke in Carolina, it was State in Carolina. And you're seeing a renaissance from this fan base and how they interact with men's basketball. Even though I know they just went to the Final Four in 24, it's really something I haven't seen. Now, that leaves the football side. You got to remember, NC State hasn't won an ACC title since 1979. They have one season where they've had double digit wins. That was Philip Rivers' junior year in 2002 when they won 11 games. So this is not a program rich in championship history. It's one that has produced NFL players. It's one that has produced quarterbacks in particular, but it's one with a great tailgating culture, but it's not one where you think of the successful milestones associated with your high level college football programs. They've never finished in the top 10 in the AP poll. Like, there's just certain things that you look at and you're like, how? With all of the talent that they've had, how has this happened? So this is the first year that I can remember. I'm 50 years old. I graduated from NC State in 1997. This is the first year where people are genuinely more excited about men's basketball. It's also the first year where people are like, you know what? If Dave wins 6 games and beats Carolina again, great. Like, the expectation level for this team is literally right at the Vegas mark of 6.5. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, that is. And something that I didn't mention, Joe, which I think is interesting, the fact that he's bringing in 2 new coordinators this season. Kirk Rover is going to take over as OC, and then DJ Elliott's going to take over at defense. What have been the early impressions, early thoughts of both of those guys as Doran's obviously trying to make some changes on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, I think on the defensive side, Tony Gibson obviously takes the Marshall job. He did such a great job with Peyton Wilson. And then you mentioned last year they had the dip on the defensive side. I think you'll see them go away from the 3-3 stack this year. I think you'll see them probably go back to a 4-3 traditional defense. That's just my guess. I think those are kind of early indications that we'll see because they didn't play a spring game,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't know for sure. I also, on the offensive side, you mentioned it was year 13 for Dave. I think most people now know Dave kind of controls everything, and that includes a lot of the situation football on offense. So I would not expect a huge departure under Kurt Roper, who was here working with Robert and I before, and I was fired after last year. So I think the offense will be fairly similar to all of the years we've seen with Dave. You got to feel good about CJ Bailey in year 2. He showed a lot of promise in a difficult situation last year, kind of being thrust into the lineup. And I know if your listeners and watchers aren't familiar, he was the high school quarterback for Jeremiah Smith. And you got to think he had every college in the country looking at him at least once. And it was a nice get for NC State to get CJ Bailey and then to keep him. Because after the way he played as a true freshman, obviously there were some other schools that were interested in him. He's actually the highest paid player they have on their payroll this year. So it was really nice for NC State to be able to keep him. But that's one thing. They were hit hard, particularly on the defensive side in the portal. Lost a lot of players, and they were able to keep Justin Jolie on offense and Hollywood Smothers, their running back, and Jolie's the tight end. Noah Rogers is a guy they got last year from Ohio State. Didn't really do a whole lot the whole year. then made a really big play to beat Carolina. And as a local kid, that kind of sprung him. And I think you'll see him be more involved this year. Not worried about NC State's offense at all. I do have a lot of questions about their defense. Their defense was bad last year. It
Yeah.
was the reason why they struggled the way that they did.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about both sides of the ball. We can start with the defense though, because again, you think of Dave Doran, you think of those great defenses, Joe. Usually around 20 points per game. Last year was around 30 points per game. What did they struggle with so much? Was it explosive plays? Was it missed tackles? Not getting after the quarterback? Like if you had to point to one thing they need to do better this year, what would it be with the defense?
Yeah, they got to create more turnovers. I think last year they really lacked for a push up front. Um, they had Davin Van, their defensive best defensive player, best defensive pass rusher. But beyond that, they just didn't have guys who were playmakers. And not everyone's going to be a Peyton Wilson, who was one of the best linebackers in school history. You're not always going to have a player like that. But I think they were really lacking when it came to difference makers on defense. I'll be honest with you, if they have them, they're going to be new. It'll be a new group of players, and it's going to be a challenge this whole season. I know you had talked about the schedule. I do think the schedule helps them early, and
Yep.
maybe they can get some of that confidence early and maybe get some of those bigger plays. Because turnover luck, as you know, it's a vibe, right? Like it's not really something that happens. It could be like one game the ball bounces away from you, and then all of a sudden you start pressing, or you go 2 or 3 games without an interception, and you're like, man, our secondary really sucks, and you're like, well, no, they just haven't made the plays, and I think defensively, they're gonna have to set a tone. Obviously, they play ECU, a team they lost to in the bowl game last year. ECU, with their quarterback back, was able to run on state last year. I thought he was really effective as a runner, which was a bit of a surprise. And I think that's kind of where it starts for state. Like I said, I expect them to change their scheme, and we'll see if they can shore up some of those problems they've had stopping the run.
You gave us SMU last year, Joe, and Clemson's the big favorites to win the ACC this year. Probably going to end up winning that conference. If I didn't give you Clemson, though, and I said give me somebody else in the ACC you think could challenge Clemson, be a surprise team, who'd be that team?
Yeah, I think there's two tickets that are worth grabbing. One is Pitt to make the ACC championship game. If you look at Pitt's schedule, it's a dream. The other is Bill Belichick and North Carolina. They
Okay.
have the easiest schedule I've ever seen in the history of this league. And I don't know why people don't see that. I get it that there's been a whole bunch of distractions with Jordan Hudson and the CBS interviews and this and that. That's just people trying to fill a vacuum because of a lack of information. I think Gio Lopez is going to be really good for them. Speaking of that Miami prep team with Jonathan Smith, Jeremiah Smith, they had Davion Gauss, their running back, was also on that same high school team. I think he's going to have a really big year for Carolina. I'm big on Carolina because of that schedule. I think Pitt has a very similar draw. So I think those are two tickets worth grabbing, Pitt and Carolina to make the ACC championship game.
Yeah, just a quick glance, Joe, at that UNC schedule. They play Clemson at home, but there's no SMU, no Louisville, no Miami, no Georgia Tech. I mean, they really avoid all the top teams.
No Pitt.
No Pitt. Yeah,
It's
outside of
like it's
Clemson.
wild.
You're right. I mean, that is crazy on UNC. We'll leave you with this. You said the odds makers have it about right. 6.5 wins for NC State this year. Do you think they end up making a bowl game this season?
I do think they're going to make a bowl. Yeah, I would take the under. I actually would. Duke has been giving Dave problems. ECU gives Dave problems. And obviously, if they lose two of those, Duke's the third game, right? I think if they
Yep.
lose two of those first three, then all of a sudden, and we did an interview at the ACC kickoff with Dave, and he's kind of spelled this out behind the scenes, but he did explicitly on our show. He's now in a year-to-year mode of how he wants to proceed. He has the school's all-time wins record. He's made a lot of money. His family, his kids are growing up. One of them plays college football. He would love to just watch his sons play, I think, at this point, retire. He loves to spend time at his lake house. This is not a guy who's going to be coaching in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think a lot of people have kind of caught up and caught on to that. And I just think the change in nature of college football has, and also his own family issues with his dad got Alzheimer's after he retired, after his dad had retired, and really didn't get to enjoy his retirement. And that's something that's super important to Dave. So I think you're looking at, I really do think you're looking at Dave Doran's last year as a college
Yeah.
football head coach this year. I think he's going to win or lose, however it goes. I think he's going to ride this one out. So we'll see how the team kind of responds to that as well.
I like it. Great stuff as always. Joe Giglio join us of Obies and Giglio. Give him a follow on X at Giglio_OG. Joe, appreciate you joining us as you're riding around, man. Nice of you to give us some time. Have a great season. Hope to catch up again with you soon.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem.